Welcome to the Right Kind of Book Talk. I'm your host, Stacey Rett. How's your week been? We've had stomach bugs up the wazoo here, and I'm really glad that everyone is pretty much back to normal today. I hope that you've all been feeling good. So this is episode 16, Triggers and Tropes, the evolution of how we choose our books. Now, this is a really controversial topic in my groups right now. The line is clear. Those who believe it is on the author to provide a list of anything that could potentially upset someone, and those who believe it's on the reader to do the research, like checking goodreads or storygraph, that has all the triggers for books listed thanks to people who have reviewed the book. So maybe thinking, what is a trigger warning? Okay, I'm going to explain this to you, okay? It's a statement at the start of a piece of writing, alerting the reader to the fact that it contains potentially distressing material. Sounds logical to maybe warn a reader when a book is going into the kind of territory that could potentially cause them emotional harm. Trouble is that people feel that anything they don't like or agree with triggers them. This statement is now seen as a way to protect people who can't be bothered to look into what books they are picking up for themselves. Like they're buying blind and then getting upset about it. Before we dive into this, let's see what books you can find at the bookstore today. That's right, it is publication day. Circle of Uncommon Witches by Paige Crutcher. And that one is like a paranormal romance. Ooh, sounds good. A Whisper at Midnight by Darcy Burke. And that one is a historical mystery book. Back After This by Linda Holmes. And that one is supposedly a romantic comedy. This one's actually on my list. I'm quite excited to get it today. Break Point by Yara St. John, and it's a multicultural sports romance. That one looks really good as well. If you're into sports romances, that one should be top of your list. Daybreak by Matt Gallagher, and that one is like a military literary fiction book. Deep Beneath Us by Katrina McPherson, and that's a mystery. Catriona. There we go. I know I get there in the end. Catriona McPherson. His Best Friend's Girl by Christine Rimmer, and that's a small-town Western romance novel. Killing Me Soufflé by Ellie Alexander. I just finished this one. It's actually part of the series, but it actually holds up pretty well as standalone if you're interested. Oh, looks like another solid week from the publishing gods. You should definitely get to your bookstore. Indie one, preferably. Just so you know, I don't have any skin in this game. Like, as you're aware, I don't even read the synopsis, so I really couldn't tell less if a book has a page of trigger warnings, because I wouldn't read that page anyway. But it begs the question, would a list of trigger warnings at the beginning of the book actually help readers make a more informed choice about the books they read, or would it unintentionally put off a reader who is now daunted with a page of heavy subject matter? And it really isn't, but it has to be portrayed this way for people who may be more sensitive to content than others. Like, this is a line. This is a line. As I always do, I took to Facebook and I asked the question I wanted to know, and that was whether or not readers needed the trigger warnings in books, and would you consider a trigger? Now, I actually expanded by also asking what trigger warnings do you feel are actually necessary in a book, and how much of the book should it be in for the warning to become necessary? So there was this woman, and she made a complaint because a book had one sentence in it, and it was this: David, I know I'm ready to have children because I wanted to keep my baby when I was 16. My boyfriend at the time got me pregnant, but our mothers felt an abortion was best. This is the only time the word abortion is mentioned. It's not a theme in the book, but she lost her cotton-picking mind. She sent the most rantiest email to the independent author who wrote the book, and she ripped her to shreds. She did this just because there was no warning about the word abortion in the book. She went off about how she's infertile and she's trying to adopt a baby. And this 16-year-old should have given up the baby instead of this sentence that apparently broke her, and she wanted an apology. Now, this might be the beginning of the idiot train, but where is the line for what is a realistic content warning And what is just a person who can't handle their own emotions and don't want to take responsibility for them. Now, you readers did not disappoint. You had a lot to say on the subject of triggers and whether they should be included as standard or whether they are spoilers, and it's really on the reader to do the research before picking up a book. Well, think about it, right? Of all the things you buy, you need, I don't know, a car seat for your unborn child. You go online, you look at the reviews, and you check the star ratings, right? You check all the one-star reviews to see if you think it's safe to put your child in it. So why don't readers do the legwork for their own mental health if this is something that concerns them? If this is so detrimental to their lives, why aren't they doing the research? Now, the whole debate came down to the same thing. Some readers felt that they were necessary because they personally needed them. And the people who didn't felt they were ridiculous. And it wasn't up to these authors to be spoon-feeding the masses who can't do simple research for themselves. It wasn't even an even split at all, okay? For every person who said, hell yeah, for a trigger warnings page, there were 30 people that said, hell no. Now, what did I notice about this? It was definitely an age thing. Most people who said yes, please to warnings seem to be under 30. The idea of what should be included could have filled a book on its own. Some of the things they listed were outlandish. Someone commented that she doesn't like it when characters drink too much. The person may not be doing anything wrong, but the drinking needed to be listed as a trigger warning. As someone who doesn't even care or need the trigger warnings, even I can see that one is absolutely ridiculous. But did they puke? Did the person pass out? Did they just drink 3 martinis and that really upset you? What ridiculous things to need a trigger warning for? Some of them went as far to say that they would boycott authors who didn't provide trigger warnings for things that could trigger them off personally. No joke, okay? I actually didn't have the words in my head after reading that to even answer them. I didn't. I had to let it slide because I was like, what? Now, someone else said that they had severe trauma after having cancer. They wouldn't read anything with cancer in the books and want that as a warning. Now, that one's interesting because I could kind of see how that would be a thing for them. I just read that therapists think trigger warnings are worse than the so-called triggering event in books because it can cause panic without context. And they state the trigger warnings are ineffective for trauma survivors and those who meet the clinical cutoff for PTSD. And increase the degree to which survivors view their trauma as central to their identity. It creates avoidance, which means they're not healing. That made a lot of sense to me. It really did. So even then people say that they need these trigger warnings. Well, technically they don't. Now, it didn't stop people who wanted them to get nasty with people who didn't agree with them. Something I've been noticing a lot lately is some readers can't seem to keep it classy. You can debate, you can disagree, but you don't get to call someone stupid or a name because they won't change their minds. One reader made this list as a standard template for trigger warnings, and those in the thread, the comments, they thought she was on the money with it, okay? Let me see what you think. Suicidal, murderous thoughts discussions, okay? Non-consent, dubious consent. I actually am really not sure why she picked dark romance themes for fiction, but somehow managed to miss sexual assault, but all right. Pregnancy loss termination, demonic activity practices. There's what made me laugh. Like, there's not a lot of that stuff going on in regular fiction. Or is there? Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Abuse, violence, injury, illness, death, decay. Okay, so it made me wonder what the obvious triggers are for everyone, and whether, rather than labeling them all as triggers, why not just have a standard content warning at the beginning like they do with movies? Okay, look, just hear me out, okay, please? Something like, some of the content in this book may be disturbing to some audiences. Reader discretion advised. If you'd like a list of the content, go to, and then it could be the author's website or publisher's website, whatever, however they want to play it, right? Isn't that enough? For a lot of people, they said yes, that would be enough to satisfy them. The ones that felt the trigger warning should be listed in the book still didn't seem to grasp that they are in control of the research. Storygraph literally has a section for it, okay? So I went to the book Haunting Adeline, I scrolled down, at the bottom it says content warnings. It says submitted by users as part of their reviews. Then it is separated into 3 sections: graphic, moderate, minor. then storygraph lists the ones that come up the most. So for this book, it said stalking, sexual assault, sexual content. Moderate, trafficking, child abuse, pedophilia. Minor, car accident, child death, death of a parent. Now you can click to see all the triggers. They were just the ones that they listed as like the most voted for. And there were hundreds of triggers, okay? Hundreds. 4 people even put excrement as a trigger, okay? I actually had a really good laugh at that. But this was a real eye-opener. So thousands of people have reviewed and listed triggers. So why won't the trigger runters, why aren't they willing to do their own research on books before they're reading them? They are, well, I'm assuming, paying good money for these books. Why are they doing the basics? Like, come on, Storygraph is free to sign up. You don't have an excuse to say a book triggered you, okay? You don't. Do you know this whole thing with triggers has only been a thing in the last decade? The stupidest things seem to set people off, and a lot of it isn't even really being triggered. You not liking something isn't a triggering event. Did you get PTSD because your boyfriend once had a sex dream about another girl and now you can't read about that in books and you need a warning? That's insane. For real, okay? But did you also know there is a website? It's called www.triggerwarningsdatabase.com, where you can literally search for a specific trigger and it will list all the books. I literally found this about 30 minutes ago when I was just finishing up, and I love it. Let's say I did a book with some slut shaming. Look, I don't even know why I picked that off the top of my head, but I just did. And I have a category, and all the books are listed for slut shaming. It's great if you want to read books with it, or you want to find the ones to avoid. It's not hard to manage your own mental health and expectations, and wanting the world to do it for you. Honestly, that says a lot about who you are as a person. Honestly, okay? So what are some of the more realistic warnings? Yeah, the ones that most people might like to know about in advance, even if it doesn't trigger them off. It's just common sense, I guess. So these are the ones that I came up with. Murder, death, suicide, because these ones come up the most. Now, if you're reading a thriller, do you really need a warning? Or is this something that needs to be in other genres only? Would you really need a warning page if the book you grabbed is a horror? No, me thinks not. But I'm sure there'll be people out there that will disagree with me. Like, it's insane. Drug use addiction. Like, that came up a lot as well. And I wonder why people with a lot of triggers don't just read Christian fiction. It's a pretty safe bet that those books really trigger you off. Why not find the right genres for you, you know? So, child abuse, animal abuse. Like, personally, I'm not a fan of either of these things, but I don't want to be warned about it coming. I think it would make me more anxious waiting for it to happen. And personally, I feel like that's worse. But that's my thoughts, you know? Domestic violence, sexual assault, rape. Books that have these topics tend to be specific in the genres. And rarely do they come up in other genres. Like, how much of the book needs to have it included in as subject matter before it should even become a warning? The word clearing one time is not enough for me, okay? That's ridiculous, okay? One word triggered you off. Get the F out of here. So I had this idea that if an author lists the tropes, like a lot of reviewers tend to do, would that help lessen the need for triggers? Now, people actually felt that tropes were more spoiling than triggers. They're both spoilers. Let's be honest, they're both spoilers, but all right. Someone made the distinction that maybe we need more on the ratings rather than triggers. This is what they came up with, and some people actually really like this idea. So they put it into 4 categories, all ages. So this was that they could be suitable for all readers, may contain mild language and fantasy violence, no foul language or nudity. Okay. Teen, may be suitable for teens, may contain violence, infrequent bad language, suggested themes, crude humor, tobacco, alcohol, and other substance use. Like, so it'll be limited, it'll appear infrequently. Teen Plus, may be suitable for teens and adults, may contain intense violence, blurry scenes, sexual content, frequent strong language, alcohol, drug, tobacco use. Okay, so it's probably going to appear in at least 50% of the book or movie, however you look at it. Mature, subject suitable for adults only. may contain extreme violence, mature themes, and graphic depictions. This was really interesting, okay? And it's something to consider. Now, someone else felt it was a form of censorship based on it being a way of putting people off reading a book based on unpleasant storytelling. But the book may actually deal with it in a non-triggering way. Now, this was really interesting to me, and I really wanted to dive into this thought process with this reader, but she didn't answer my comment, like she didn't answer me again, which was really sad. But this was one wild ride, okay? Authors feel like it's not up to them to manage your expectations, but a lot of them are okay with maybe having a core consensus. Let's say like a book, if it has child abuse in it somewhere, that all books that contain child abuse should have it listed. You know what I mean? Whether it be on the author's website or the publisher's one, if you go to Amazon, for example, and you search for Haunting Adeline, it says right under the synopsis, author note, this book ends on a cliffhanger with content warnings. Please check the author's websites. So why isn't this enough? Why are people still expecting it to be in the actual book? If you're in a bookstore and you don't have access to the internet, well, somebody works there. There's no excuse, okay? You want your piece? Do the work. Don't be a lazy butt. So maybe content warnings can become standard as a way to warn readers that a book includes sensitive or difficult topics. Stories explore subjects such as abuse, addiction, or violence can often be triggering, especially for people who may have experienced similar trauma. Content warnings give them the opportunity to opt out of books outside of their comfort level, or to wait until they're in a particular frame of mind to tackle the particular subject. There are a wide variety of topics some readers might want to be warned about, but here are some of the common ones. Things like racism, homophobia, bigotry, etc. Sexual violence or abuse, depictions of grief and loss, blood and gore, suicide or self-harm. Now, in the age of spicy books, some authors also use content warnings to alert readers that a book contains sex scenes that might be really graphic. Now, who would this actually help? There seems to be three main purposes for content warnings. The first is to allow certain readers to protect their mental health by warning them of potentially triggering material. Okay. Help readers find what they want to read and filter out what they don't. Now, that does actually make a lot of sense, but still, that should be on them to research, no? Help adults screen reading materials for kids. Story elements that some readers think could activate a trauma response include homophobia or transphobia, rape and other forms of sexual violence, child abuse, incest, animal abuse or death, racism, again, self-harm, suicide. Yeah, okay, I can totally see why suicide would be on there. Pregnancy, childbirth, miscarriages, okay, eating disorders, sizeism or foot shaming, traumatic medical diagnosis. Now, I think this list is probably pretty bang on. I think it covers all of the major topics. I think these things are likely to have caused somebody to have a PTSD diagnosis, and these are valid triggers. But it's still a question of whether they should be in the actual book or posted somewhere else. Honestly, maybe putting it in the back of the book would save the people who don't want the spoilers, and they don't have to read them. Now, the people that need them only have to go to the back of the book. So it's really up to the author. Well, the author and maybe their publisher. It'll be a decision between the pair of them, right? So this kind of leads me into book tropes. Now, what is a book trope? Before diving into the different types of book tropes, let's have a quick rundown of what a book trope is and why this idea matters. Now, book tropes serve as a kind of guidepost for their readers, helping them navigate and interpret the plot, characters, and themes. They provide a sense of familiarity and comfort as the target audience knows what to expect and can identify easily with the storyline. Think of them as like an ingredients in a recipe, right? So when you combine with the storytelling, all the elements, they create a unique, memorable dish, ideally that pleases the reader's palate. So let's take a look at the generic topics. Okay, I'm going to pick contemporary fiction first, okay? So what are some of the tropes, the standard tropes within contemporary fiction? Things like this set in the modern day. Conflict that comes from interpersonal relationships. Family drama. Coming of age. Dealing with mental illness, addiction, sexual orientation, and or abuse. Unresolved endings are very common. Lack of common plot structure. No otherworldly elements. A death in the family. Okay, so you right there have picked up a book in the contemporary fiction genre. You should already have an idea of what kind of books are within the genre. It's absolutely crazy to me that some readers don't even do this. These books often deal with things like death, mental health, abuse, addiction, conflict. Come on, why the hell do you still need a trigger even on top of that? Okay, let's take a look at literary fiction, okay? So this basically is more literary writing than the plot. Like, that's what matters more than the plot. Now, many readers seek these books out for a certain feeling or experience related to the writing itself rather than the plot. Childhood memories, dealing with childhood trauma is common in literary fiction. They're often set in a small town. Major characters get killed off. There is no guarantee of a happy ending in this broad genre. That means that even major characters can die. They often include dysfunctional family dynamics, meandering plots. Once again, plot is not a major concern. Many of these books end ambiguously or very abruptly. Did you see? Childhood drama. Childhood trauma. I literally wonder what these people are going off of. I don't read synopsis. I freely admit this, but I do know the genre of the book I am reading because that's common sense, okay? I know what to expect based on the genre. So where are the readers? Romance. Okay, so this one is a lot. There are a billion possible tropes, okay? But these ones are the usual suspects. Happy endings. The most popular and important romance trope on the list. The love triangle. 3 characters, 1 choice, and some unavoidable hurt feelings. Love triangles make for plenty of tension. First proximity. 2 characters who find love when they're forced to spend time together. Forbidden love. Romeo and Juliet, but without the tragic ending, and made with the modern romance reader in mind. The enemies to lovers trope. The characters start out hating each other, but true love prevails. Now, this one is often combined with the forced proximity trope. I am not a fan of enemies to lovers, but it doesn't trigger me off. Fake relationship. One character ropes another into posing as their partner, often to get a nagging relative off their back. But what starts out as pretend soon turns serious, and this trope is like so popular, okay? Fake relationship, fake dating is so popular. The other woman, man. Be careful with this one, okay? No one likes a cheater, which is why there's often some legitimate reason for being unfaithful to the partner. Now, that could potentially trigger somebody off, right? Incapable of love. That character has been hurt so bad they've given up on love. Until love is the answer. It doesn't matter what the question is. I like that trope a lot. I do. Okay. The pure and the promiscuous. One character, often the female, is inexperienced in the ways of love. The other, often the male, is overly experienced. You know the rest. Perhaps a trope that's antiquated and certainly problematic in today's culture. Love at first sight. Insta-love. The characters don't need to get to know each other to see if they're compatible. They fall in love without even talking. The rest of the story is usually a will they, won't they plotline. I actually really love insta-love. It's really off-putting to some readers. I love it. Personal preference, right? Marriage at convenience. There's no love between this couple, at least not at first. But as the two get to know each other, they soon discover the sparks. Now, this could really trigger someone, okay? The idea of being made to marry somebody you've never met, or maybe you don't like, or for a family obligation, like that really could potentially trigger somebody. Unexpected love interest. While the protagonist goes on date after date with the wrong people, their friend is always there for support. Pretty soon the main character realizes that the friend is the one they've loved all along. This one's really popular nowadays. Fated mates. In the paranormal romance genre, the fated mates trope is where two soulmates, usually one tends to be a shifter, I don't know why, that just seems to be the case, it just is, find each other and things soon get steamy. Again, somebody could get triggered off with that if they don't like sex in books. The misunderstanding. It's not all sunshine and rainbows in romance stories, alright? There needs to be conflict that comes to a head near the end of the book. This conflict is often predicated on a simple misunderstanding. This is one trope that many romance readers feel is overused. Now, I actually hate this trope. Hate it. Hate it with passion of 1,000 bloody suns, because one simple conversation could have fixed the whole thing. But it doesn't trigger me. And there's a really important distinction, okay? Alert, alert, alert. Also, some people hate, and I do mean hate, accidental pregnancy tropes. Again, no trigger, y'all. That's a preference. Know the defense. Alright, so dark romance. This genre is basically one big trigger, and if you pick up a dark romance book, you should know that that right there is your warning, okay? Someone got so upset at the lack of consent in Zodiac Academy. Girl, it's listed as a bully romance trope. It's right there on Amazon. So dark romance explores dark themes within the romance genre. Things like unhealthy relationships. So with depictions of unhealthy relationships, emotional manipulation, or abuse of power. Trauma and violence. Plots that include trauma, violence, captivity, or dubious consent. Obsession and betrayal. Stories that explore themes of obsession, betrayal, and redemption. Not always, though. Morally grey characters. Characters who are not entirely good or evil. They can fit anywhere they like, depending on what they're getting up to. Depictions of illicit sexual content. Death or morality. Themes related to death or morality. Dark settings. Dark or ominous settings. Power plays, power dynamics between characters. Outside danger. External threats or dangers that characters face. Physical injury. Characters experience physical injury. Visceral tension. So this is like sexual tension that is intense or visceral, can also include a stalker, cheating or infidelity, a serial killer, knife play, forced pregnancy, kidnapping. These are all pretty dark. But I'm also just going to note here that I posted the question that I asked today in a wide variety of book groups. And I got to tell you, okay, thriller readers, they don't want or need triggers, tropes, and honestly, a lot of them are complaining that even synopsis is too much information. But I am telling you that people's views seem to be age-related. The books they read factor in as well. Like, I noticed people in my dark romance group, and some of them had past trauma, and what they did was they used books to kind of desensitize themselves to what triggers them. And I really love that idea. What I understand is that most people don't need them and don't want them, but not tropes, not the triggers listed at the beginning of the book. They just don't want them. They're spoilers. That's it. Now, some people don't need them, but they also don't care if they're there. It's not a lot of people who feel they should have them in books, and they don't want to have to do the work to find out about the books that they're reading and whether they're going to suit them or not. And this is really still crazy to me, okay? Like, I don't buy anything without looking into it first. I don't have triggers or trauma that could potentially be triggered by books. So I don't look too deep into what my books are about. But if I did, you best be believing I'd be on Goodreads, Storygraph, asking people, does this book have disturbing content, before I spend my hard-earned money on it. I thought this was basic logic, but it doesn't seem to be. A lot of readers felt that your triggers and trauma are for you to own, and throwing your responsibilities away and blaming authors is ridiculous. Some people use triggers as a shopping list. Like, it's been an interesting week, okay? An interesting week. Like, one lady was like, yeah, I wake up on a Sunday and think, I need a stalker today. And honestly, I think she's my new favorite person. Well, there you have it. How do you feel about trigger warnings? Do you feel like they are necessary and should become the new normal in books? Do you think a content warning on the big things should suffice, and then it should be up to the reader to do more research? Do you think authors should list tropes or triggers at the front of the book? Or maybe just tropes instead of triggers? Do you feel it spoils the book? Maybe you couldn't give an F either way. I think next week I'm going to look at tropes some more. Like, I didn't even know tropes were a thing until Bookstagram, and I often get lost at what the trope even means. Like, there are things like cinnamon roll, something, golden retriever, like, I don't even know, okay? So maybe the episode can help you out too after I do all my research. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the subscribe button for youtube.com/@therightkindabooktalk. You can follow me on TikTok at RightKindBookTalk, Instagram at therightkindabooktalk, Facebook at RightKindBookTalk. You can always email me at therightkindabooktalk@gmail.com. You can give me feedback or topics you might like to see covered, or you can come on the show and we can have a chat. Like, you can pick the topic too. Like, I don't care. I'm at that point now where I don't even care. Don't forget I have a book merch store, bookaloriandesigns.com and bookaloriandesigns.etsy.com. Etsy has a 15% off sale store-wide right now, so don't miss that. And I literally have the cutest bookmarks, okay? And they're all on sale. Take a look. So you can find The Right Kind of Book Talk on Spotify, Apple Music, RSS, Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Amazon, and pretty much anywhere else that has podcasts listed. But if you give me a follow on any of those, you could be in with a chance to win bookish prizes. Send a friend to my YouTube and they subscribe. You could double your chance of winning. So this is me signing off. Stacey Wright at The Right Kind of Book Talk. Have the reading day you deserve, and I will see you next week. Take care.